What is up, everybody? Happy Tuesday. Welcome back to an all-new episode of the Pack-A-Day Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. You can find the podcast at Pack-A-Day Podcast. It is Tuesday. That means it's Justis Mosqueda Day. You can find him on Acme Packing Company, of course, on social media at JUMOSQ. Justis, great to be back chatting with you. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm good. I'm just tapping my foot, waiting for all the combine stuff. Brian Gutekunst has a presser on Tuesday. That'll be interesting to see. Maybe we get some answers on kind of the direction that the team is headed to. Hopefully he answers something. We'll see.
My guess is it's going to be a read between the lines sort of interview, but maybe not. Maybe we'll learn actually something. I'm curious if he'll get asked about Jair again and just how committal he'll be about that. Last time he was very just nondescript with his response, like not saying anything kind of one way or the other, which kind of read as like, yeah, he's probably going to be gone. So we'll see if that changes if he gets that question. I don't. What would you ask him if you were there tomorrow? What would be like your number one thing you'd want to get out of him?
Jair would be the first thing, and then I'd probably ask about McManus. Why you don't have a deal with him done yet?
Yep,
because he's going to be a top 2 kicker on the free agency market.
Transition tag him.
I was looking at it, and I was looking at it, and I was like, if push comes to shove, like it's actually not a bad idea. Andy might have a point. Yeah. So
I don't think it would need to get that high. Like he should probably accept like a 1 year, like 5.5 million, which is under that.
Well, he should be around like the ballpark of like 3.5, something like that.
Yeah. So it shouldn't get to that point, but yeah. I can't imagine he would make much more. Like 4 would seem like it would be on the high end. If like you do 2.8, I can't imagine he's saying no to that. So but yeah, that's another one that you would just like. I mean, they have time. Like, there's not a huge deadline here for McManus. What they've got another couple weeks, so there's plenty of time there. But yeah, what do you think the very first move that Green Bay gets done? And like anything, could be a cut, could be a re-signing, could be anything. What's the very next thing that happens that we are talking about?
Probably a McManus re-signing because the Packers don't need the cap space from the Jair deal, and there's no triggers in it in terms of like, on the 5th day of the new league year, like he gets guaranteed this amount of money. Like there's no, like the Packers can string it out with Jair if they really want to. So yeah, I would probably say a McManus re-signing, unless there's someone else that they want to bring back. Like if they want to bring back Slayton or McDuffie, kind of, the more I've looked at the defensive tackles in this draft, the more it's becoming really clear. It's definitely one of the strengths in this class.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that Slayton makes sense in that context. So maybe McDuffie as the third linebacker, but I would guess it's probably McManus.
Yeah, I think that makes all the sense in the world. It just doesn't seem like there's anything that urgent on their plate, probably outside of that, to make sure that he doesn't hit free agency and end up somewhere else. And if you can get that done, you basically go into free agency set. You can release Jair whenever if you need to, or you can try to trade him, obviously. Just doesn't seem there's a ton of urgency that needs to be there unless, again, it is the McManus signing. So I'm 100% with you. As we are sort of in this NFL Combine week, some rumors of rule changes. I want to get to a lot of that as well. But like, what's the number one thing on your mind right now? Like, we could discuss a variety of different things. Where do you want to start?
So the Rams just hired Alex Van-Pelt, right?
Love this. Well, let's do it right away.
I saw the immediate connections for the Rodgers stuff. He's a California guy. If you're a Packers fan, you probably know that. He has a house in Malibu. Doesn't get good text reception or call reception, right? They told him FaceTime him. That's why I didn't answer Brian Gutekunst's calls for an entire offseason. I don't really understand what the hell is happening with the Rams. I don't get it, because I've seen the things, and it's like, yeah, the New York Giants might trade for Matthew Stafford. Why? Why are the Rams moving off of Stafford? They just made it to the playoffs. They've just got off of the hump, right? I mean, they paid everyone. They deleted first-round picks for a damn near a generation. They didn't have one between like Jared Verse and Jared Goff, right? Like they
Jeez.
just didn't have a first round pick because they kept trading for people and stuff. You just played with the defense, like their defense this year was a lot like our offense last year, right? Where it was just like, hey man, rookies are going to figure out how to play, and
Yeah.
they kind of developed down the line. We saw what Chris Shula was able to get them to perform at, and now they're about to come into sort of cap solvency, I would say.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're going to have to get rid of Cup. I don't think that's that big of a deal. I don't think you
Shouldn't
trade a
be.
quarterback because of that. That's not blowing the team up. I just don't really understand why does Stafford want to leave? Why do the Rams want to trade Stafford? Why are the Rams immediately replacing Stafford with a 40-year-old quarterback? How
And
does
why are
that
the
work in that
Giants? Why are
timeline?
the Giants going in that direction too? Like
Yeah,
it's a little
well,
bit more interesting. Like I get a
I
little bit
think
more,
the
but even
Giants are
that,
on the hot seat. I mean, the
yeah,
owner, right,
it's
came out
fair.
and said it's playoffs or nothing next year. So, I mean, if the Giants are trading future draft picks and they don't have to use what are they, second, third overall?
The Giants are third.
Yeah, if they don't have to use that on a quarterback, right, and they could draft, I mean, maybe Travis Hunter. I don't know who they would actually take in that third spot. But that would be a pretty big talent infusion from them if they can steal from the future to save their jobs, get an extension, and then keep the thing rolling forward, right?
Sure.
These jobs are many millions of dollars at head coach and general manager. I can understand why they would want to dice roll the future of the franchise just to
That's
preserve
fair.
their own job security. I mean, I think that makes sense for them. But if you're the owner, you probably should be thinking a little bit further than that.
This is the only one that I can get close to if I'm the Rams. Like if I'm, it's the only. I still probably don't go this route, but if I feel like I can sign Darnold for like 15 mil less per year,
I mean, he's
and
going to get tagged, right?
I, I don't know. You think so?
I don't know. So the Vikings, the interesting thing that they did with Byron Murphy Jr.'s contract, Byron Murphy Jr. had void years at the end of it, right? So when a void year triggers, it deletes those years. So
Yep.
now you're an expiring contract, which is
Correct.
how the Vikings would have been able to franchise tag Byron Murphy. They extended the deadline to when it voids until after the tag window. So Byron Murphy can now not be tagged because there's never a point where he's in the final year of his contract before the franchise tag window ends.
Hmm.
It does give them a longer runway to try to come to terms on a long-term deal, but
Sure.
it is now an all or nothing proposition for Byron Murphy. It also takes the tag off the table for him. That means Darnold is really their only tag option. They have a ton of cap space immediately, obviously. They're losing a ton in free agency, which is why they have this cap space. They
Yeah.
have like no draft picks. They have one pick in like the first 4 rounds. I think it's just their first rounder. So I mean, I guess it would hurt in the short term because that's a lot of cap space for a quarterback. Even if it is only a 1-year dice roll, it would if you don't come to a long-term deal, that will eat a lot of your cap in a season where you have to backfill with veteran contracts and stuff like that. I just kind of assumed that the Vikings would be willing to do whatever to keep whatever best quarterback option. I mean, what are you thinking? The Darnold Stafford flip?
I was just saying, like I wouldn't even necessarily like proposing it. The only one that I could remotely get on board with would be if they would somehow get Darnold for like 15 mil cheaper, not have to give up anything for it, just signed him in free agency and flip Stafford for like the third pick in the draft. Like that'd be the one where if you're looking at it from like a long-term standpoint of like, I'm getting a top 5 pick and I'm getting a 10-year younger quarterback where Stafford's already 37, Darnold's 27. Darnold played well enough to lead a team to the playoffs last year. I can at least understand somewhat of the logic in that situation, even if it's not necessarily something I would probably do myself in that situation. But that, like outside of that, to your point from earlier, it doesn't make sense for Stafford. It doesn't make sense for the Rams. I don't know why you'd want to go Aaron Rodgers in that situation. It all feels like this ends up with Stafford and the Rams just reconciling and figuring it out. But man, it just feels very weird at the moment.
Yeah, that's my question. If I were in Indianapolis right now, I would be trying to figure out, is Stafford they hate each other?
Yeah.
Because why else is this happening? Right.
The Colts seem to make the most sense too. Like this is also their this right within their wheelhouse. Like they like from Matt Ryan to Joe Flacco to Matt Stafford, like just keep it rolling.
Yeah. Oh man, the damn Colts.
I know.
What do you do? Yeah, I mean that is a weird situation.
It's another team that needs to win now.
I guess, but I mean, I don't even know how you handle that locker room, because you bench Anthony Richardson for not showing up to not rehab. What do you call it? Recovery, right?
Yep.
He takes himself out of a game. Everyone is like, what the hell was that? You bench him, but then he has to enter the lineup again because the guy ahead of him played so poorly. And nothing really got solved from a locker room standpoint.
No.
And all you proved is that you need the guy. So did he learn the lesson? I don't know. And
no idea.
Nothing changed there. No Ballard change. No Steichen change. Weird.
Yeah. NFL's weird, man. Like, I don't know. Like, nothing would shock me at this point. Like, let's get Stafford to the Giants, Rodgers to the Rams. Like, let's get weird. Let's absolutely get weird. Like, it's a good thing for the Packers in that situation, I guess, if that's something that happens. I was really hoping I was going to look at like this is like the 1 year the Rams don't play in Green Bay. We get a Rodgers and the Rams versus Packers matchup, but what can you do?
I still think it would be fun the Ireland Rodgers
for sure. Game. Absolutely. I'm all in on that. If it were to come to fruition, why is this not announced yet? If it's going to actually happen, that's another weird thing.
I don't know. The Chargers announced the Brazil game, right? And I would have thought same day they're going to announce the Packers Ireland game, but yeah, I guess not.
Guess not. What are you most looking forward to scouting combine this week, other than just getting numbers on players? Is there anything you're keeping an extra eye on?
Yeah. Wide receivers, we talked about this in the previous episode. I don't think there's a lot in this draft class in terms of what the Packers look for, which is like 6 foot, 200-pound wide receivers, and what they need, which is a field stretcher who runs at least a 4.4. So the more guys who enter that conversation, the happier I will be. Right now, I think the good bets are Territora, McMillan, Emeka Buka, Alec Ayumanor, and Savion Williams. I think those four are probably the guys who are going to hit that. The more receivers who enter into that group, the better for the Packers, because right now it's not looking like a deep wide receiver class. The other thing I'll look at is defensive tackle. I would not be shocked if the Packers use a first-round pick on a defensive tackle. I know I'm the Oregon guy, so people are going to make fun. I got the Oregon Duck. Ooh, cameras are weird right there.
Just beat Wisconsin. You guys just beat Wisconsin in basketball. Not a fan of that right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't watch college basketball until tournament starts. But, Derek Harmon is a very good football player. He's better than Wyatt was coming out. He was not 25. He doesn't have some of the off-field stuff. I wouldn't be shocked if he's a guy that the Packers have conversations about. Kenneth Grant is another guy who I think kind of fits what they want to do. The second defensive tackle out of Michigan. This class is super deep at defensive tackle. Just having some numbers on those guys going into scouting deeper into the class would be nice for me. So those are kind of the two positions I'm looking at the most. Cornerback, I don't know if we're going to learn a whole lot. We've talked about how there's Travis Hunter, right, from Colorado. He's probably going to go top 5 minimum, right?
Yeah, you'd think.
And then after that, 4 of the next 5 top cornerbacks, or 3 of the next 4 top cornerbacks are ended the season with a season-ending injury, right? Will Johnson from Michigan, Siobhan Revel from ECU. He ended up tearing
yeah.
his ACL non-contact injury in practice. The Benjamin Morrison, the Notre Dame cornerback, he had a hip injury that ended up costing him the second half of the season. He was out well before, the Fighting Irish ended up taking that playoff run. And then the healthy guy is the Texas kid, right? And you're seeing the Texas kid rise up and up and up draft boards just because he's like the one healthy cornerback in this class after Travis Hunter, whose Heisman winner is going to be probably the first non-quarterback off of the board whenever that starts rolling. I think Daniel Jeremiah had him ranked like 9th now, the Texas cornerback. And I'm like, hadn't seen that before. I did a Packers mock draft roundup for the site if you want to see what guys people are picking for the Packers right now. And Barron, who's the Texas kid, was easily the most picked guy just because it's, hey, he's a healthy cornerback. Yeah. And you're probably going to see a lot of that. And from now until April, unless Barron is basically out of range for the Packers.
I'm so interested. They could go in so many different directions with this. It does feel like defensive line or corner, probably the most two likely, positions in the first round.
Good offensive line class too.
Yeah. Very intrigued to see what direction they go in. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting some numbers, putting some numbers to the names, and just kind of seeing, especially from a Packers standpoint, where we know how much they value not just the numbers, but obviously the overall athleticism. And this gives us the best opportunity to see where that athleticism lies for these players, and immediately jump some of those guys up from a scouting standpoint to see like, all right, that's a probable Packer. And it just kind of ramps up very aggressively from there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the big ones that you can do from the weigh-ins, right? I think wide receiver is one of them, and then probably cornerback, right? Because if you're small, they're just not. I mean, if you're Jair is small to them, right? They're not going to take anything smaller than Jair.
Yeah, he's about the smallest,
right? So, they're going to be looking for 5'11" corners and 6-foot receivers, and that kind of helps whittle things down a little bit more, so you're not drinking water from a fire hose if you're looking at Packers draft stuff.
Makes it a little bit easier, and like you said, just more containable than, again, trying to go through 400 guys all at once. You get to narrow it down as much as you possibly can once we get some of these numbers. I want to ask you about a couple other things. I know you recently wrote an article about, and this kind of goes with the draft as well, of where Green Bay actually needs the most bodies. So not necessarily quality, where they could use a number one wide receiver, maybe a number one corner, something like that, but where they actually need additional pieces on the roster in totality. So what did you kind of come to the conclusion of where Green Bay needs the most bodies on this team?
Yeah, because I think like a position like defensive end, right, is a position where the Packers need quality. The last thing you need to do is just add another body there that takes up a roster spot, right? You need to get someone who can either be a starter or not take a guy at all, right? From a quantity perspective, cornerback is a huge one. Assuming that they move off of Jair, they're only going to have 2 guys returning from the 53-man roster. Maybe they end up, re-signing, a Corey Ballantyne or something like that as a depth piece and special teams guy. But right now they only have 2 guys. You're going to need more than 2 cornerbacks to get through an NFL season. So that's one of them. Linebackers basically in the same spot, right? I mean, you're a third of the time you're going to play 3 linebackers. That's kind of how base defense works in the NFL right now. And they got Cooper, they got Quay Walker, and then the only other linebacker under contract is Tyron Hopper. Yeah. And Hopper was a guy that they struggled to get on the field even in garbage time last season. So I'm hesitant to think that Hopper is going to be a guy who's just going to hop into a starting role. There's a pun intended. Right, yeah, no, I didn't mean that. Threw me off. I'm hesitant to think that Hopper is going to be a guy who just hops into a starting role and just takes it over. So maybe that's a position where it's a mix of quality and quantity. Hand up. I was not a Hopper fan when they drafted him. Thought it was a surprising pick. Thought he went 2, 3, 4 rounds higher than I probably would have taken him. So I was super surprised that they went with him in the top 100, but they had a 2nd round grade on him, they said in the post draft presser. And then the offensive line is another one. Just a position that they can add more depth, right? I mean, I know people aren't really hitting the panic button for losing Josh Myers because we got a guy like Jordan Morgan coming off of the bench that would, go into a starting role somewhere on the front five. The Packers
Right.
always talk about getting the front five on the best front five on the field. After that, though,
Nothing.
they really have shaky depth, and that was something that never really was tested during the season. But then it came up in the Eagles game, and it was a problem, right? So, Monk is a guy that was inactive, healthy scratch for the second half of the season at least. That was a bit surprising to me. Travis Glover was active, came in, stunk up the joint, had a bunch of penalties, got ripped off the field immediately for Kadeem Telfort. So if your sixth guy is Kadeem Telfort, I don't know. Do you want to get better than Kadeem Telfort?
Yep.
Maybe you want to get better than Kadeem Telfort, especially when you have, contract decisions on Ryan and Rasheed Walker, coming up in the near future where you might have to pivot off of those picks. So I think offensive line is another one.
But, you look at 2026, right? Obviously, Zach Tom's an unrestricted free agent, but I think that probably solves itself.
He'll get re-signed.
Yeah. Sean Ryan, though, and like you said, Rasheed Walker unrestricted. And then Elton Jenkins, $24 million contract in 2026. 20 of it they get off of if they were to release. So it's only 4 dead on that. And I'm not saying they should or would. I'm just saying they could. So that's another interesting one where like the only one I feel really good. I mean, Jordan Morgan's obviously going to be on the team. You feel pretty damn sure Zach Tom will be on the team in some capacity. And then after that, 2026 is like a complete, let's see what happens. And I think you're probably looking not only like, hey, we need some depth and competition now, but like we might need starters in 2026.
Yeah. Again, that's a position, just throw in competition. I mean, it really is as simple as that. I think a lot of the day 3 selections, maybe even late day 2, are going to come from those positions. It's going to be cornerback. It's going to be linebacker. It's going to be offensive line, just because that's where they need bodies more than, a guy who could potentially start this year. And maybe some of that changes with like free agency. But that's where they're at as a team right now.
I have a game I want to play with you. We're going to go through the key positions, and I want you to make a prediction right now whether the player that they get at this position, the biggest player, the biggest name, the biggest acquisition that they get at this position is via draft, free agency, or trade. So I'm going to start with corner. Will their biggest addition at corner be via, you don't have to name a name, just draft, free agency, or trade?
Free agency. I think there's enough options out there that they'll be able to add one in free agency.
Paulson Adebo. All right. Defensive end, draft, free agency, or trade?
That's another one where I think free agency. It makes a lot of sense. It's super deep at that position. There's no excuse not to grab one unless you don't want one.
Totally agreed. Defensive tackle.
I think that's the draft.
Totally
I think that
agreed.
was the draft for sure, because there's not a lot of well-rounded defensive tackles in this free agency class, and this draft is extremely deep. It seems it would be very weird to use the money you could have signed a cornerback or edge rusher in this free agency class versus the draft class.
Yeah, I totally agree. And there's also just not like it's a lot of 3 techniques, and it's not exactly what they need at this point. So
they're like 280 pounds too is the problem. That's what the free agents are.
Yeah, Osa, Milton Williams, etc. Offensive line.
Draft.
I think so too. We're on the same page so far. Then wide receiver.
I think
you're hoping trade. I know you want to say trade.
I know. I just saw like the DK flashed in my mind, and I was like, I don't know, man. Maybe there's a chance.
I can't figure this one out for the life of me.
So again, I don't even know if DK is available. The Seahawks are just in a horrendous cap situation right now. I doubt it's free agency.
It's so hard to pick one unless it's like Devontae, and I just don't see that either. I don't know.
I think this goes to show you. I think this is where the Packers have the least room for error is wide receiver right now in terms of what they need to add to the team, what's available, where it's like, oh man, we're really threading the needle here. Like if they trade up and draft a wide receiver a little bit too early, like they did with Christian Watson, it
It
wouldn't
could be
shock
bad.
me
Yeah, it could
because
be bad
like
though
it
too.
makes sense.
But it could, yeah, it depends on if they're overshooting because there's just not their wide receiver that they want. But it all, to your point, it could make sense. It just, yeah, it's one of those drafts, like it's not the strongest wide receiver draft. So like I like it more when it's a strong tight end draft and they grab Kraft and Musgrave in the same draft rather than, oh, it's not a strong wide receiver draft, so let's trade up to get the wide receiver. I don't know. It's always a thin line between the both of them.
Yeah.
Couple things on wide receiver. I guess the one for sure. You don't think there's any chance that the Jets would trade Garrett Wilson, do you?
Not anymore. It doesn't seem like that's a route that they want to go down. It seemed like Wilson was pretty vocal about his situation where he was like, I want to be the number one receiver.
Yeah.
Get Devontae and Aaron Rodgers the hell out of here. He's just gonna throw to him the entire time. The Jets telling Rodgers politely, hey, we're not really interested in your services anymore. How about you? Go start looking elsewhere. Kind of bodes well for him. So I assume that the Jets probably want to build around Garrett Wilson, don't want to move off of him.
Yeah, I'm hoping they Jets this up and somehow would be willing to do it. And I would be all for that if I were Green Bay. That would be the one where I'd be like, all right, that one actually makes a lot of sense to me if they could somehow find a way to get him.
If we want to do some pie in the sky stuff,
Let's do it.
The Bengals aren't going to be able to afford to pay Jamar Chase
There's no
and
chance.
T. Higgins. Look, I'm just saying call. That's a weird franchise that operates unlike any other club in the NFL. Because people talk about, teams like the Raiders, right, being broke,
Cheap.
broke franchise. Yeah. I mean, they're still getting the money that everyone is spending for getting these YouTube TV accounts set up and stuff like that, right? And the Raiders spend money. The Bengals just don't want to spend money.
No, they do not.
So if they're going to be petty pitching and stuff like this, they don't want to put up the upfront cash for a T. Higgins extension. What is it going to look like with Chase? And we're a year away from them having to decide, do we want to hit Higgins with a third franchise tag or do we want to hit Chase with his second? I think you at least have the conversation. I know Burrow is probably pulling his hair out right now, looking at his team's situation. I know he was like, the Eagles make it seem like, the salary cap doesn't exist. Hint, 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 nudge, 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 nudge. Like, Mike Brown, please spend money.
Yep.
I would at least call about Jamar Chase. I mean, he's another guy who, big body guy who can certainly stretch the field. You could throw it to him. He's definitely got a lot more wiggle than a guy like DK Metcalf. I don't know what that trade would look like. It probably looks like 2 firsts.
I was just about to ask you who gets more in a trade, Myles Garrett or Jamar Chase?
Chase.
I think so.
I mean, he's a full contract younger for sure.
Yeah, I think so too. Huh. Who would you rather have for the Packers, Jamar Chase or Myles Garrett?
This year only?
No, like let's assume that
Am I counting the trade capital is really
you're counting the trade capital, the contract, the player, and like their age, all of it. You like the Bengals call. Let's just say this: the Bengals call and they say we want 2 firsts plus Romeo Dobbs and some smattering of other crap, whatever. All right. And the Browns call and they want 2 firsts plus LVN plus a smattering of other crap. Maybe there's a 3rd round pick for both of those in there as well.
They're asking for 2 firsts.
The Browns.
Yeah, I don't think Garrett's going to get traded for 2 firsts. If he does,
might be right. All right, so take into consideration that Chase is probably a little bit more than what Garrett would be on the trade market.
Man, I still kind of think Chase.
Interesting.
I still want to take Chase. Yeah. So.
Oh, I know what I was going to say too.
There's still free agents out there at defensive end who would fit in Green Bay and make a lot of sense. I mean, I just saw a report that like Joey Bosa might get released, right? So the Chargers moving off of both Mac and Bosa. That's just another top 20 body at the position that's available this offseason.
There's a lot
So,
better edges available, just pass rushers available than there would be premium wide receivers. So for that in and of
for
itself,
sure.
you can easily
For
make
sure.
the argument for Chase. The one thing I'll ask you, or I was going to say before when you said like there's a very thin line here, the only thing I would add to that is it feels like, and maybe I'm making this up in my head, but it definitely feels this way that like the number one traded position at the trade deadline is wide receiver. Like, you know, even you see some players released from time to time, like an Odell Beckham got released when he went to the Rams, and you will see players released. You will see players traded at that position. It does feel like if you're in a position at the trade deadline where that's what you need, you actually might be able to find one. Whereas like an offensive lineman, a pass rusher, like it is very, very rare that you are finding those midseason in a trade.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, that's a valid point. I will say if you are trading for a guy at the deadline at receiver, it's probably more of a stopgap than anything, which
A
can help.
1,000%, no question at all. But it could potentially help if you're sitting at
Yeah.
whatever 5-1, 6-2, whatever the case may be. And there's like, you're like, hey, the one thing we're missing is that wide receiver. And there's a good wide receiver available via trade that could potentially help you. Usually you can find someone like that. It's probably not going to be somebody that completely alters the shape of your team or whatever, but you can usually find a good wide receiver.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, who knows? Maybe DK is not even available this offseason, but if the Seahawks start losing some games during the regular season, he's available at the trade deadline. I think that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, there's pluses and negatives to everything.
Yes, sir.
Jamar Chase would be very fun.
That's
Again,
I don't know.
pie in the sky. We're wasting a lot of
in
airtime
that
on this.
situation. I think Chase. But Ed is a very, very tough question. I guess I'll just go with the younger guy in that equation. But man, I don't know. Now I want one of them either way. Just give me one of them. But yeah, I guess you can find another pass rusher probably. Although if you're spending that much on Chase, I don't know how much you have left over to spend on a premier pass rusher either. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't have a good answer.
I mean, he's going to get a new contract, so it's going to be backloaded and all that stuff. So that'll help a little bit.
True. How much does this change in salary cap affect things at all, in your opinion? Like just being a little bit higher than teams were expecting?
I think teams will be more competitive for sure in free agency. I definitely think that like Trey Smith is going to reset the guard market.
Easily.
I don't know how many. I think Byron Murphy has a chance to reset the corner market. I don't know how many other guys are like that in this free agency class. But I think some of the teams that are in really bad cap situations, like New Orleans is in a pretty bad spot. Seattle, I think, is like $40 million over the salary cap too. A team like Minnesota, where they have to bring back a bunch of guys who are potentially free agents, right? Just to be able to field the competitive roster this upcoming season. I think it makes it more competitive for them to even be able to bring those guys back, right? So I do think it's kind of like a double-edged sword a little bit, because everyone's gonna, the cap's going up, but so are player salaries, right? So just getting in front of stuff, I think, makes a lot of sense. Like, the tackle market isn't going to be reset. That's gives Green Bay a great opportunity to get the damn Zach Tom deal done before that starts jumping up, right? Like
sooner rather than later would be nice. Yes.
We saw it with like the Elton Jenkins contract, where like that kind of looked crazy from the jump, where it's, wow, that's a lot of money for a guard. And then the guard market started jumping immediately. And now the Elton Jenkins deal from like a per year look is a pretty good steal right now. I'm hoping that that'll be the same case for the Zach Tom contract.
It'd be nice. No, I think the sooner they can get that done, the better. Although I'm sure his agent probably knows that as well. But yeah, you would like to get that thing done and locked in, and 4 or 5 year deal probably for him. He's going to be a good player, you would think, for a long time. And the sooner you can get him locked in, it's probably going to be more beneficial for the Packers. So yeah, I'm all in on getting that done. All right. I want to wrap up 3 potential like rulesy things here. First and foremost, the big controversy. The Packers proposed ending the tush push. It was like, the weird thing about this is, like, I think it's actually still on ESPN as we're recording this year. Yes, The number one headline on ESPN, and it's already been out there for hours who the team is, like hours. The number one headline on ESPN right now is unidentified NFL team proposes tush push ban. Like we all have known it's the Packers for hours now, and it's still listed as that. So like there's this thought of like, who this mystery team wants to ban the tush push, and it was like Diana Rossini immediately reported it was the Packers. That's probably like the kind of interesting aspect of like there was this, oh, some team did it like under the radar or whatever. But I don't know. It's what I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's lame to ban it unless you're going for a player safety argument, which I don't know if actual quarterback sneaks are any better from a player safety argument, because I think you're talking about defensive linemen, offensive linemen getting their knees cut from under them, and that is still going to happen even if there's a quarterback sneak. I don't know where you draw that line, right? Not having a misdirection, not having sort of lateral movement. You're not running away from anyone, right? It's just we're trying to run through you. I understand from a player safety perspective why you wouldn't necessarily want that. I would have assumed this would have been pushed from the league side more than anything, because they're the ones who are paying out, the insurance money and stuff like that for sure. Vested veterans and stuff. But like, when does that end? It would be my question if that was your argument. Like, I don't know. Should we get rid of inside run? Should we get rid of duo? Should we get rid of inside zone? Should we get rid of dives?
Have to pass on the goal line.
I mean, that's a whole lot of, direct contact too. I wish it wasn't us. It's kind of embarrassing that it's us. We also run it. Like, I know Tex went through for APC, and the first Tucker Kraft sneak wasn't a tush push, but then later there were tush pushes that the Packers ended up running. Just looks bad that we lost to them in the playoffs and are belly aching about it. I know the Packers vote. If you don't realize this, the Packers vote very differently usually on some of these rule changes than a lot of other teams, right? I think they were one of 3 teams who voted against the kickoff return proposal last offseason. So it doesn't shock me that it's the Packers. It's just we're just adding fuel to the Eagles fans' fire, and the last thing that we needed was to propel them even more.
The only thing that is some sort of saving grace is that the thing from Mark Murphy, if I remember correctly, was from like a Q&A like well before this, right? If I remember correctly.
It's like his 5 questions thing that he does every month.
Oh, but he said it on February 1st. All right, never mind. Then I can't defend it then. I thought it was like months ago, but like before they even lost to the Eagles. But I think I'm wrong. Actually, it says it was February 1st. So, all right, apparently that's not true. So yeah, does look like a bit of sour, at least the optics of it look sour grapes, and just be like, well, we couldn't stop it. Actually, in fact, they actually stopped it for like better than most teams did. But yeah.
And they covered the fake pass, the play fake off of it.
He was open, was he not?
Sort of. Yeah, they sort of covered it.
Yeah. There was an incompletion.
They were ready for it. They were ready for it.
They kind of covered it. It was incomplete, and I will very much take that as a victory. All right. I'm assuming then you do not want to see the tush push banned, or like, well, if regardless of Packers Eagles, or like regardless of any of it, are you cool with the play in and of itself? Is it good for football, bad for football? Does it just like stop existing on its own volition when teams start stopping it? Or like, I don't know.
Again, I don't really view it that different from an obvious inside run play.
Yeah.
So if you're going to ban it, ban all inside run, I guess is kind of my thought. I mean, the only thing I really worry about with the tush push is that, and I say this as a former high school football coach, so I don't want to seem like I'm picking on these guys. I'm one of them too. The last thing is we need is some dumbass high school football coaches being like, what we need to do is spam this with 14-year-olds and have them running head first and just cutting out each other's legs when you probably don't have an offensive line coach who knows how to coach guys on how to actually cut and just go for guys' knees and stuff like that. Like, that's where I worry about it, where I'm like this. And high school football, for the most part, like you're running outside. There's not a whole lot of inside run. It's not 3 yards in a cloud of dust. That's not what's happening in high school ball. Tons of teams are running, single wing and stuff like that, where even when you're running inside, you're like faking the outside play. So it's like a misdirection type of thing. I just worry about what it would incentivize at the lower levels, but at the NFL level, I mean, you're running inside because that's what's being presented to you from all these two high fronts, and people are protecting the edges. They're playing wide nines with the ends. Like, it's how you combat that. It's why it's efficient. It's why teams are running it, right? It's why teams are going out of their way and putting, if they don't have a quarterback who can do it, they're going out of their way to have a tight end who will be put in that position. So I'm not belly aching about it. I think the Eagles do a pretty good job of it. I think you are handicapping a little bit of what makes Jalen Hurts special, especially at that position when you try to ban a play like this, because what the Chiefs aren't going to do, the Chiefs aren't going to run that play with Patrick Mahomes, right?
No.
And part of that is because, he's gotten injured on quarterback sneak and stuff like that before too. But Jalen Hurts was like the powerlifting champion in the state of Texas, right? Like, if you had him, you'd be doing the same thing. So I don't blame them for going this route.
Who'd be the greatest tush push QB of all time? Cam Newton?
Cam, probably. Yeah.
Cam would have to be Cam, right? Can you imagine?
Yeah, I mean, I made anti-Cam propaganda at one point. I had a YouTube video that I cut up. I think it's unlisted right now, of all the rushing touchdowns that he had his MVP season, because all of them were just basically short yardage plays. It's not what people think like Auburn Cam when he's weaving in between LSU defenders and stuff like that. That's not what his MVP season was. But good God, I can't imagine trying to stop him at the line of scrimmage. I mean, he was just jumping over guys at the goal line sometimes too.
Right.
I mean, doing like backflips and stuff. So like front flips. So yeah, I don't know how you get him down other than with like a tranquilizer dart or something like that.
That's something we also can't have flowing down to the lower levels. I don't need tranquilizer darts in high school football anytime in the near future. All right, 2 other ones really quick. Kick return rules, it sounds like, are also going to get discussed. The 2 things, either bringing the touch back to the 35 or maybe moving the kick 5 yards back. We've talked about this in the past. But of those 2, if either the kick would be 5 yards further back or the touchback would be brought to the 35, which would you prefer? Or keep it as is?
Okay, so if you move it back 5 yards, you're not going to move the onside kick back 5 yards, right?
You would think not. You would think not. I don't know.
So you're going to have disjointed kicks, which is fine.
Yeah.
Or moving where the X is on the field, right? Because that's, if you guys don't know, that X in the middle, those X's in the middle of the field are where you kick from.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't mind that. Seems like it would just be easier to bring it out to the 35 and just have the X at the same spot, keep the onside kick and kickoff spot from the same situation. For some reason, the NFL doesn't like that stuff. It was a big conversation when we talked about like the 4th and 15, attempt instead of the onside kick type of stuff. I would just bring him out to the 35, which, by the way, me and Sam Schwartzstein was another big one, right? He does the Amazon Prime Vision stream for the Thursday Night Football games. He worked in XFL too, alongside with me. Every person who worked in the XFL was like, this needs to come out to the 35. If you have it to the 30, teams are just going to end up kicking touchbacks again. And lo and behold, look what happened.
Yeah, I'm fine with either. It doesn't really bother me either way. I think I might, Justice, just be leaning towards like, just put the ball at the 25. I don't even know if I need kickoffs anymore.
How do you start a game? You just blow a whistle and then the team walks
25-yard line. Greatest game of all time was that exhibition game where they didn't have kickoffs that the Packers played in. Because the field, something was wrong with the field or something like that. I don't remember what it was.
I don't remember this.
There was an exhibition game. It was in like Canada or something, was it not?
I don't remember. You're gonna have to tell me. When was this about?
Hold on, let me see if I can find it. Raiders and Packers play preseason game on 80-yard field. Canadian Football League games are played on larger field. On Thursday, the NFL played a preseason game in Canada on a shortened field. As the Packers and Raiders ventured north to Winnipeg to play a Week 3 preseason tilt, they decided to play on a shorter field, 80 yards, due to safety concerns over field conditions. And the 10-yard line will function as the goal line. In lieu of kickoffs, the ball will be placed at the 15-yard line. That was in, what did I say the date? That was in 2019.
Okay. So I would have been full blown in XFL mode. That's why I wasn't paying attention to that.
Yeah. So I'm not really like pushing for it in any major way. I'm losing interest in all kickoff / kick returns, but I don't know. Hopefully they can figure out it.
Again, if we're gonna the last thing that we need is more variables to change where the ball is going to be placed, and fans being like, why the hell is this happening? Yeah. Have the kickoff spot be from the same spot. I don't like it being moved back 5 yards. Make the kickoff come back to the 35 if you want to actually incentivize kickoffs. If you don't want to incentivize kickoffs, why are we having kickoffs? Just start the game. I know that opens up an issue where, kickoff is synonymous with the start of something in America, because football matters to these people, right? So getting rid of that and just having a game start with the offense walking out to the 20-yard line or whatever would be a little odd. But if you don't want kickoffs, that's what we're going to get. People don't want to watch touchbacks. It's annoying.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if there's a perfect answer, but hopefully the NFL can find it. They're not exactly always the best at finding the right solutions in these situations, but maybe this will be the time they actually figure it out. I mean, if you can figure it out, I'm cool. It's going to be to the 35 and you're going to get a touchback, and Brandon Aubrey's going to be in field goal range from like the word go, basically. But yeah, I guess that's hopefully going to incentivize the actual returns themselves, which is something that I'd be totally cool with in that situation. And then last but not least, potential for more replay assist, face mask penalties, things like that, more egregious penalties. I'm for it, but what are your thoughts?
I didn't see that one. But
roughing the passer, face mask fouls, and other significant penalties, more of like the ones that have a little bit more what's the word I'm looking for? Like you're judging them in real time. It's not like a black and white, like yeah.
I think as long as everything is quick, it could help. I'm a big fan of the Sky Judge. I don't know how everyone else feels. We had one in XFL. We loved it. NFL didn't have it until after they saw what we did. I think having instant input is pretty good. Some stuff is still going to slip through the cracks, and I'm sure that's going to feel like a gut punch to certain teams when that ends up happening to them. But I think reviewing like face masks and stuff makes sense. I mean, this is probably a response to the head push of Mahomes in the Super Bowl, something like that, where he could have gotten.
It would have had to have been Mahomes for them to consider changing it. So,
well, I mean, I don't know if you know this, but there was a Packers playoff game that was kind of decided by a face mask a couple years ago.
I might remember that one just slightly.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't see how it would harm the product. I think getting calls correctly is good, as long as things keep moving, keep making the game fast. Do not slow this thing down.
No, I'm with it. I'm all for it. I think the eye in the sky can be super helpful, and I think adding that where there's a clear and obvious situation and you can correct it in real time. By all means, correct it in real time. I think there's a ton of value in that. I think it speeds up the pace of play. And I think that's something the NFL needs to kind of continue to look at, is how to speed that up, because for you and me, it might not matter. But as you know, Justice, the TikTok generation wants everything very, very fast. So it's probably something they're going to have to deal with over the course of time.
Well, I've seen too. I mean, I've just seen like NBA discourse talk about like tip-off times and stuff like that. People are freaking out. I know, I mean, baseball, put in the pitch clock, all that stuff. I mean, pace of play matters, man. I mean, big time. Again, I don't want to mention drink every time I say XFL, but we had a running clock, right? And basically we wanted people come in and out in 2 hours, right? And get the full amount of game action of a normal football game. And people seem to love it. College
football's changed. Try to speed up their pace of play, which desperately needed it. It's still not enough, but it desperately needed it at the time.
Yes. And then the fans are also mad at the same time because they're like, no, we just wanted commercials deleted entirely and we still want the same amount of football. And it's like,
Yeah.
buddy, I don't.
Yeah. College football was
Players are about to
painful
get
for a
paid.
while.
I don't think you realize how much that they're going to go for more money.
Yes.
Everyone involved is going to ask for more money. So.
Shocker it is. All right. That's all I got on my list today. Justice, anything else you want to go over?
Not really. I mean, I really just want to get that Stafford thing off my chest for the most part.
I talked about it on the radio today. Not just a bizarro situation. And they're like, I guess the fact that they're saying like, yeah, McVay and Stafford love each other. This is just business. The fact that they have to announce that probably makes me more questioning of like, oh, so they don't love each other. There's some serious issues here. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know where that would have broken down. They won a Super Bowl together. They literally were the team that came closest to beating the Eagles in the divisional round last year. Like, wasn't a team that was super far away. It's just a very odd situation.
Yeah, I need the Seth Wickersham, Don Van Natta piece about what the hell is going on with the Rams right now, because I genuinely don't understand it. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, even as someone who will venture down like football conspiracy theory world.
Yeah, this one's a tough one. Maybe we'll get the puzzle pieces to put it together eventually, but right now it seems very, very odd. Justis, you're the best. I know you can find you on social media at JUMOSQ. What do you got cooking on Acme Packing Company this week?
We're going to cover every damn thing from the combine. So,
Beautiful.
Gutekunst's presser stuff on Tuesday, and then what Thursday on, just like what numbers matter, who ran, who didn't run, all that stuff. We're getting it up.
What time's Goody talking on Tuesday? Do you remember?
I think it's 9 Central.
Beautiful. So right as I'm done with the radio show, I get to go listen to Goody. That sounds perfect. And then you and I can talk about it on Sparky's show at 2 p.m. tomorrow. So that'll be great. Looking forward to that. Follow him on social media at JUMOSQ. You can find me at Andy Herman NFL. Find the podcast at Pack-A-Day Podcast. That's going to do it for us today. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.